The verdict is still out for Kirby Smart on JT Daniels and Georgia's offense. That's what he said tonight before Georgia's game with South Carolina. Let me read you the full quote and we'll take it from there. Well, on whether JT Daniels' emergence spurred excitement from the offense, well, I think the verdict is still out on that. The sample size we have is small, but the sample size we have, meaning the coaches in practice, we get to see him every and each day. You have to remember that we've seen this guy go with the ones for longer than anybody else because he's practiced the Missouri week the whole time to here. So he's talking about the delay that happened not that long ago. I've seen him make some good plays. Seen him make good decisions. He had some really good plays today, talking about practice. We go good on good and compete on third down. He moved in the pocket, made some plays. The biggest improvement that he's made is his pocket awareness, and that's where his best decisions have come. As far as transformation or anything like that, I don't know. We have to find ways to run the ball, and that's probably the most important thing to me so we can be explosive in both ways. Dean Legge from Dog Post, making you a smarter Georgia fan. Thanks for joining me again tonight and watching, or this morning I should say. What should we expect from Georgia as it relates to explosion on the offensive side of the ball? This really is the first time we've seen explosive vertical passing plays. It's just not been common from this Georgia offense. They've had to earn everything. Well, no one wants to earn everything. You want it for cheap if you can. And that's what they got. You know, all these cheap plays that Aaron Murray used to get, deep balls down the field. I call them cheap plays because you want to score on 2-play drives, not 12, you know. And for Georgia the other night, that was the most explosive they've been the entire season. And I do think Kirby's right. I say that a lot, actually. I probably should say that less often. It sounds like I'm cheerleading for him. But he is correct to say we don't know yet. You know, I think it's right to still be skeptical. There was a reason why JT Daniels did not start before now. And believe me, if they thought he could throw for 400 in every single game and it would have been a lot better than Stetson, they would have done that. They would have done that earlier in the season. We need to see more of this. This is one dot on a very long line. So we need to see that he doesn't have a multiple turnover game right after he had a 400-yard passing game. This can't suddenly become, for lack of a better term, this can't become the Pac-12. You know, you still have to protect the football, play defense, and win. That you have to win by 10 points more than you did, earlier in the decade, just shows how football has evolved even in the SEC. But from this point forward, you really are looking at the 21 season. It's hard for me to believe Georgia could lose to Carolina. It's hard for me to believe that they could lose to Vanderbilt. You know, the trickiest game is the Mizzou game, I think for sure, going out there. But these are all games they should win, and then you're going to probably play a top 10 team in Atlanta for the Peach Bowl. So that's if you win those games. So the verdict, the verdict's out. The jury's still out on this thing. We don't know. The leading indicator, which is the one game that he's played at Georgia, he played much better than he played at USC. Okay, he took, I believe it was 20 sacks, 25 sacks, something like that. It was a crazy number of sacks. He took 1 sack this past time. He had games with turnovers. I mean, that was a common thing. He had 10 turnovers, 10 interceptions, excuse me. So we don't know if this is going to take off or not. My suspicion is that it will be better. I don't know if it's going to be 600 yards of offense in a game. That has been something that's not out of the realm of possibility for these Georgia teams. When you think about 07 and even sometimes in 08, I mean, they weren't knocking on the door 600 all the time, but there were times in games like, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, the Florida game for sure in 2017. That was a bad Florida team. I think the Missouri game that year was a pretty significant offensive production, but Georgia's not going to throw for 400 and run for 200. That's you kind of run out of plays. So to get to 600 yards, you're probably going to have to get to almost 500 in passing, 470, something like that. And the other night, does Georgia go for 400 in the passing game because it couldn't run? I mean, that 3-3-5 felt like a 5-5-5 at times. And Kirby said tonight he was bullheaded. He felt like he was bullheaded, continue to run. But I got to say, I think you do have to continue to run. fans were getting very frustrated with that, but that's what Georgia is, and they're not going to turn their back on a run game that features some pretty good running backs. I mean, Kenny McIntosh is not completely back, it doesn't seem like yet, and Milton is hurt, but Zamir, James Cook, certainly James can take it one step and he's gone on the perimeter. And Zamir they didn't have holes. So you don't give up on the run game. But is the jury still out for JT Daniels? I think so. I mean, the jury, we're not going to be, we're not going to know for sure about JT Daniels until probably the beginning of the 21 season. That's when we'll really know what you've got on your hands. You're playing Clemson. That's going to be a different Clemson, but they're still going to be a top 5 team. Both teams can lose that game and move on to successful seasons. But it's going to be, no one's going to give JT Daniels credit for beating Mississippi State or Carolina or Vanderbilt, maybe even Mizzou. But if you knock off a Cincinnati or, if you get BYU, it really doesn't seem like it's going to be BYU at all now. But if you get a kind of a pretty good matchup, and Cincinnati would be a tough team to deal with, okay? If you get those if you have 5 games at the end of a year, half a season, that can really tell you where you're at. At the beginning of all of these, at the beginning of this season, if you're just joining us, I talked about how we'll know what's going on with Georgia's offense the first half of the first game of the season. And we knew, didn't we? Had two quarterbacks, and they scored 5 points. So now that we're on the third Georgia team of the year, you had the team that went to Arkansas, the team that left Arkansas, and then the team that played Mississippi State. Now that we're on our third team in six games, we will just see how this progresses. If Daniels plays with the decision making that he played with the other night, the big balls are going to be there. If he plays with the decision making and the accuracy that he did, he's not going to hit 400 yards. You don't need 400 yards to be successful in the SEC or in college football passing the game, because if you can run for 200, that is lethal. That would be lethal. 480 total yards of offense with half of it coming from the run game, that's going to be tough to deal with for a lot of teams. And Georgia ran against Florida, ran against Alabama, ran against Kentucky. They ran against everybody except Mississippi State. So that's an outlier. Is JT Daniels thing an outlier? That's the question. And that's what we don't know yet, but we will be finding out. Dean Legge from Dog Post, making you a smarter Georgia fan. Make sure you sign up for the newsletter. It doesn't cost any money. Click the link, put your email in. We'll see you on the website. Thanks for watching.